Imagine this. You wake up, check the news, and find out that the leader of a sovereign nation has just been captured. Not in some history book, not in a movie, but overnight in a foreign military raid. Well, this is exactly what went down in Venezuela in 2026. A sudden, absolutely dramatic military operation that, believe me, changed the course of a nation in a flash. So let's just get right into it. The date is January 3rd, 2026, and the world wakes up to some truly unbelievable news coming out of Caracas, Venezuela. President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, were gone. They were in United States custody, just like that. And this wasn't some slow-moving coup. No, this was a pre-dawn raid with a codename straight out of an action movie, Operation Absolute Resolve. In just a matter of hours, U.S. Special Forces dropped into the Venezuelan capital, and they were aiming for the very, very top of the government. And the sheer scale of this thing was just staggering. We're not talking about a small, sneaky mission here. This was a full-blown, coordinated assault. You had Delta Force, the CIA, the FBI's elite hostage rescue team, the whole shebang. And get this, over 150 aircraft were involved. A massive, and I mean massive, meticulously planned operation aimed right at the head of state. So how did the world find out? Through a formal press conference? A quiet diplomatic cable? No way. It was confirmed via a social media post from the U.S. president himself. He even included a photo of Maduro in custody on a U.S. naval ship. I mean, talk about an unprecedented way to announce something like this. But let's be clear, this operation was anything but clean. It came at a really heavy price. According to Venezuelan and Cuban officials, more than 80 people were killed in the assault. And among the dead were 32 Cuban military and security personnel. A detail, by the way, that was later confirmed by President Trump, who pretty much said, yeah, they were there protecting Maduro. So the big question is, how on earth did we get to this point? An event like this, it just doesn't happen in a vacuum. It was really the explosive finale to years of escalating tensions, sanctions, and threats flying back and forth between the United States and Venezuela. And when you look at the timeline, you can see this clear, deliberate path. It really kicked off with legal pressure way back in 2020 with that narco-terrorism indictment. Then things ramped up after the 2024 election, which the U.S. and others called a sham. From there, it moved to straight-up military posturing, a naval blockade, and then boom, the final announcement, just one day before the raid itself. Now, the official reason for the raid, that's one thing. But if you listen to what the administration was actually saying at the time, well, it paints a much more complicated and, frankly, a much more revealing picture of what was really driving all of this. So, on one hand, the administration sold this as a law enforcement action. They kept pointing back to that 2020 indictment, calling Venezuela a narco state and Maduro a cartel boss. But then, on the other hand, the U.S. president was talking very openly about a completely different motivation, getting control of the country's oil. And here it is, in black and white, in a press conference just hours after the raid. President Trump himself framed the whole thing in these stark economic terms. He basically said it wasn't just about justice, it was about business. This kind of blunt talk about the economic angle, well, it became a huge issue for international critics. And what a business it is. We are talking about over 300 billion barrels of proven oil reserves. That's not a typo. It is the largest supply on the entire planet. A resource that has pretty much defined Venezuela's politics, its economy, and its place in the world for 100 years. Okay, so Maduro is captured. He's on a plane to the United States. That immediately sparked a critical question, ripping through both Caracas and Washington. Who is actually in charge of Venezuela now? And, removing the guy at the top didn't provide a clear answer. In fact, it just created this incredibly dangerous power vacuum. The American administration tried to sell what they hoped was a simple solution. President Trump claimed that Maduro's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, who was sworn in as acting president, was ready to play ball. He made it sound like she was totally on board with the U.S. plan for the country. But what Rodriguez herself said in public, a completely different story. In a televised address surrounded by her top military commanders, she called the capture a kidnapping and made it crystal clear where her loyalties were, declaring Maduro the one and only president. So what you had was just total confusion, an absolute mess of internal conflict. You've got Delcy Rodriguez as acting president, but Maduro's hardcore allies still control the military and the police, the real lovers of power. And at the same time, the main opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, is saying her candidate should take over, only to be publicly shot down by President Trump. It was a power vacuum filled with contradictions, and it left the country right on the edge of civil conflict. And of course, the raid sent massive shockwaves all around the globe. It created this incredibly uncertain future for Venezuela and for the whole region, really. And it split allies and adversaries right down the middle. The fallout from this thing stretched way, way beyond Caracas. The international community was just completely fractured. You had major world powers like Russia and China, and even neighbors like Brazil and Mexico, all condemning the raid as a flagrant violation of sovereignty. Then, on the other side, you had countries like Argentina and Israel celebrating the move. This deep split really exposed the geopolitical fault lines and threatened to throw regional alliances into chaos. And, a lot of international law experts, they did not mince words. A UN Special Rapporteur flat out labeled the U.S. action a crime of aggression. This wasn't just some academic legal debate. It set a really dangerous precedent. It raised a huge question for our times. When, if ever, is it okay for one country to just go in and forcibly remove the leader of another? And let's get back to the oil, the supposed core motivation. Well, experts were quick to point out that just getting rid of Maduro doesn't magically fix a country's crumbling oil industry. It's not like flipping a switch. Rebuilding it would be a monumental task, needing billions upon billions of dollars and, as you can see here, anywhere from 2 to more than 7 years of work. And that all depends on a stable political situation, which was now anything but certain. And this really gets to the heart of the matter. As analysts like Professor Jose Ignacio Hernandez pointed out, capturing the leader doesn't mean you've captured the state. The whole power structure, the loyalties, the system that Maduro spent years building, it was all still mostly in place. And that's the crucial long-term challenge, right? Removing a figurehead is one thing, but dismantling an entire political and military machine, that's something else entirely, leaving the country's future in this really perilous state of limbo. So this leaves us with a final really provocative question that just hangs over this whole event. Does capturing one man signal the dawn of a new, democratic era for Venezuela? Or does it mark a troubling return to an age of what some are calling resource imperialism, where a foreign power steps in, not for ideals, but to control a nation's natural wealth? For the people of Venezuela, and for the rest of us watching, that's the question, and the answer is still very much unwritten.